The river had taken 3 women from Nia's family before her 30th birthday. That morning, it gave something back. She'd come to scatter her mother's ashes, another woman the river had claimed in last year's storm. The tin container felt light in her hands, absurdly small for a life. Rain pressed down on the tin roofs of Kati village, a sound like fingers drumming on a coffin. The smell of wet earth and diesel from the nearby cargo road mixed with something else. Salt. Salt in a freshwater river. That should have been her first warning. Nia stood barefoot at the edge, where the mud sucked at her heels, her mother's favorite cotton dress clinging to her thighs. She was about to open the container when she saw the movement. Not thrashing, not drowning. A woman, belly swollen tight as a drum, lying on her side in the shallows. Her skin caught the morning light in fragments, like broken mirrors. Her eyes were open, the color of deep water, and they held Nia still. The woman's lips moved. No sound came out, just a bubble that rose and popped with a word Nia understood without hearing. Help. Nia's first thought wasn't fear. It was memory. The 3 miscarriages, the way her body had betrayed her each time, expelling life before it could anchor. She waded in, the river colder than it should have been in June, and reached out. The woman grasped her hand. Her skin was warm. Her grip was human. But between her fingers, Nia felt the thin webbing, delicate as a newborn's eyelashes. She pulled. The woman was heavier than she looked, dense with muscle and something else Nia couldn't name. On land, her body changed. The scales along her hips softened into skin that looked almost normal, almost human. But her belly remained taut and round, and when Nia pressed a hand to it, she felt a kick so strong it traveled up her own arm and into that hollow place where her own children had never grown big enough to speak. The woman opened her mouth. One word, in a language Nia had never heard but somehow understood. Survive. Nia looked around. The path was empty. The sun was still low, bleeding orange across the water. She could walk away. No one would know, but the word echoed in her chest, and she realized the river wasn't asking her to save a life. It was offering her one. Nia had stopped praying for a child 5 years ago, when the doctors in the city told her some women simply weren't meant to carry life. She'd stopped coming to this river too. After her mother's fishing boat tipped during a storm that wasn't even that bad. The river was a graveyard in her mind. So why now? Why this? Why would it return a pregnant body instead of taking one? These questions didn't have words yet. They were just pressure behind her ribs, a feeling that the world had tilted and she was the only one who'd noticed. The woman in her spare room, Kai, she'd whispered her name was more more than a refugee from some underwater tribe. She was a question made flesh. What do you do when the thing you've lost most comes back, needing you more than you need it? What does it cost to become a mother to a child that isn't yours, from a world you barely believe exists? Can love mend what grief hollowed out? Or does it just fill the holes with new kinds of breaking? Before we follow Nia into what happens next, tell us in the comments where you're listening from. These stories travel farther when we know who's carrying them. And if you're new here, subscribe so you never miss what the water brings. Nia lived in Kati, where the river wasn't just water. It was timekeeper, income, and ancestor. Her husband Kofi worked the cargo docks 3 hours south, coming home every other weekend with money that never quite covered the rent and a silence that grew heavier each visit. Their house was small, concrete blocks painted yellow, with a corrugated tin roof that sang when it rained. Nia taught English at the primary school, where the children called her Miss Nia, and didn't know about the empty room in her house where a crib had once stood, then been dismantled. then burned for firewood after the third miscarriage. The village knew, though. The women at the well stopped asking her about babies after the second loss. They'd touch her shoulder silently instead, a gesture that meant both sympathy and distance. Grief was contagious, and Nia wore hers like a shawl she couldn't remove. Her mother had been the river's daughter, fisherwoman, boat mender, singer of the old songs that taught the water how to behave during storms. When Nia was small, her mother would take her out in the wooden canoe carved from a single mango tree, teaching her to read the river's moods by the color of its surface. Brown meant anger, green meant plenty, silver meant memory. The day her mother died, the river had been brown and silver, a contradiction. The storm came sudden, the boat capsized, and the river kept her. They found the canoe 3 days later, intact, but her mother was gone. The river had taken its payment. Nia's father had left years before, unable to live in a place that demanded so much of his wife and gave so little back. Nia stayed because the village was in her bones, because teaching was the only thing that made her feel useful, because leaving would mean admitting the river had won. Her marriage to Kofi had been arranged by the elders, a practical union between a teacher and a dock worker. They'd been happy enough at first, building their small house, planning for children. But the miscarriages carved out the space between them. Kofi started working longer shifts. Nia started dreaming of water. The morning she found Kai, Nia had woken before dawn, her hands shaking. She'd dreamed of her mother humming that old fishing song, the one about giving back to the river what it had given you. In the dream, her mother's hands were wet, and she kept trying to press something into Nia's palms. A silver scale, warm and alive, but Nia kept dropping it. When she woke, the sheets were damp with sweat, not urine, not blood, just sweat and salt. She knew she had to go to the water, not for answers, for company. Grief sometimes needs a witness, even if it's just water and stone. She walked the path her mother used to take, past the defunct oil palm plantation, where teenagers now stole kisses among the rusted machinery, past the community tap, where women already queued with yellow jerry cans, their laughter sharp as machetes. No one saw her turn toward the old landing, the place where boats used to launch before the water level dropped and the fish grew scarce. The river looked tired. Its edges were brown with sediment from upstream logging. But in the center, where the current still ran clean over rock, something moved. Not a log, not a crocodile. A shape that breathed. Nia stood frozen, the ash container suddenly heavy in her hands. The shape resolved into a woman, belly swollen, lying on her side in water so shallow it shouldn't have held her. The woman's eyes opened. They were the color of deep water, and they saw Nia, not just her body, but the hollow places inside her. Nia dropped the container. Her mother's ashes puffed into the mud, gray on brown. She didn't care. She waded in, the water climbing her calves, her thighs, her waist. The woman didn't thrash. She just lay there, one hand cradling her belly, the other reaching toward Nia with a trust that felt like a dare. Nia's hands found her shoulders, her back. The skin was warm. Smoother than human skin had a right to be. Between the woman's fingers, that thin webbing. Along her ribs, a ridge of scales so delicate they felt like embroidery. Nia pulled. The woman was heavier than she looked, dense with muscle and something else. Purpose, maybe. On land, her body changed. The scales softened, the tail splitting into legs that could almost pass for human. Almost. The belly remained taut, round, and when Nia pressed her hand to it, she felt the baby kick. The kick traveled up her arm and into her chest, into that hollow room where grief lived. The woman opened her mouth. One word, survive. Naya looked at the river, at the ashes dissolving in the current. She looked at the woman, at the impossible life inside her. Then she bent down, put the woman's arm over her shoulder, and began the slow walk home. The river watched. It always did. By the time Nia reached her back door, her arms were trembling. Kai was conscious but quiet, her eyes tracking every movement. The banana plants in the yard, the clothesline with Kofi's shirt still hanging from last month, the neighbor's goat tied to the mango tree. She was memorizing a place she'd never been meant to see. Inside, Nia lowered her onto the woven mat in the spare room, the one where the crib used to be. The room still smelled faintly of paint from where Nia had covered the mural she'd started. A beach scene with tiny handprints that were supposed to belong to her child. Kai curled onto her side, her tail, Nia couldn't call it anything else, contracting visibly. Nia ran a hand under the tap, filled a cup, brought it back. Kai drank, but spilled half, unable to lift her head properly. The water ran down her chin, onto her neck, and where it touched, her skin seemed to absorb it, the scales shimmering brighter. Nia had seen enough births to know time was short. She'd assisted her auntie twice, had held hands and boiled water and cut cords with a sterilized razor. But those were human births, with human sounds and human outcomes. This was different. Kai's pain seemed to pull at the air itself, making it heavy, viscous. Nia felt her own lower abdomen twinge in sympathy, a ghost memory of the life that had almost been. She moved by instinct. She dragged the plastic washing tub into the room, the one they used for clothes, for storing yams, for everything but this. She filled it with cool water from the pump, bucket by bucket, her shoulders already aching. Kai looked at it and nodded. Naya helped her slide in. And immediately, Kai's breathing eased. The water seemed to soften her, make her more human. Her tail flickered, the scales separating into two limbs that looked almost like legs. But when Nia touched her ankle, she felt the ridge of scales, delicate as a newborn's fingernails. Kai spoke again, her voice like water over rocks. "My baby cannot breathe your air yet. Not fully. She needs the river's first breath. The water must claim her before the air does." Naya understood. The baby needed to be born in water. But not this water, not tap water in a plastic tub that smelled of detergent. It needed the river. The same river that had taken her mother. The same river that now seemed to be offering something back, but on its own terms. Kai gripped Nia's wrist. Her fingers were strong, webbed, insistent. "You must bring the river here. Or take me there. But the baby will not wait. She is between worlds, and between worlds is no place to be born." Kofi called that evening. He was staying an extra 2 days at the docks. Something about overtime. Something about a bonus that would cover the roof repair. Nia lied and said she had a fever, wasn't feeling well, needed quiet. She could hear the relief in his silence. One less problem to manage, one less conversation about why they couldn't conceive, one less reminder of failure. They'd been married 8 years. Their love had become something that lived in separate rooms, separate lives. The space between them was wide enough to hide a mermaid. She hung up and looked at Kai, who watched her with eyes that knew the shape of abandonment. That night, Naya slept on the floor beside the tub. She dreamed of swimming, of her body moving through water without weight, without failure. She dreamed of a child who looked like her mother and like this strange woman combined. And when she woke, the room smelled of salt, and Kai was staring at her with eyes that knew her name without being told. "You're not afraid," Kai said. "Not a question." "I'm too tired to be afraid," Naya answered. And it was true. Fear requires energy, and Nia had spent all hers on surviving. Grief is exhausting in its maintenance. It leaves no room for new terror. Kai told her story in pieces, between contractions that came faster now, a rhythm like a drum calling dancers. Her name was lost in translation, but it sounded like Kai, which meant ocean in a language Nia didn't speak. Her people lived in the deep places where the river still ran clean, where the old ways of water hadn't been poisoned by oil or plastic nets. They built shelters from sunken trees and old fishing nets weighted with stones. They farmed algae and freshwater mussels that tasted like iron. They sang songs that taught the water how to flow around obstacles, how to remember its own path. But the oil from upstream had started reaching them, coating their gills, making the young ones sick. The older ones had begun to forget the songs. And a forgotten song, Kai said, is a dead song. Our children are born knowing the songs, Kai said, her hand on her belly. But if there's no one to sing them back, they forget by their first moon. They become just fish, just water, just memory without language. Sing one for me, Nia said. Kai closed her eyes and hummed. It wasn't beautiful in the way human music is beautiful. It was older, stranger, built from notes that mimicked current and stone, that held the frequency of underwater caves and the silence of deep pools. Nia felt it in her teeth, in the roots of her hair, in the soles of her feet. She felt her own grief respond, rising up like water in a well that had been dry for years. She began to cry, not from sadness, but from recognition. The song was about loss, about mothers who couldn't keep their children, about children who had to choose different worlds. It was her story, set to water. When Kai opened her eyes, they were filmed with tears. You understand. I understand being caught between two worlds, Nia said. I understand not belonging fully to either. Kai told her the rest. The baby would be a bridge, the first of her kind who could truly live in both places, who could sing both songs. But she needed a human midwife to birth her, someone with hands that knew land, to anchor her to it. Without that anchor, the baby would slip fully into water and be lost to Kai's people forever. Naya was that anchor now. Her choice to help had bound her in ways she hadn't understood. The river brought you to me, Kai said. It remembers your mother. It remembers your losses. It wants to give you a purpose that isn't just surviving. It wants to give you a child who can survive anything. Nia thought about survival, about how it had become her only goal, her only identity. She taught children to read so they could survive in a world that demanded English. She stayed married to Kofi so she could survive the shame of being alone. She visited the river to survive the memory of her mother. But surviving wasn't living. Kai's arrival was asking her to live, truly live, at the edge of everything she'd known. That afternoon, Kofi came home unannounced. He stood in the doorway, smelling of diesel and another woman's perfume, and saw Kai in the tub, her belly swollen, her skin shimmering like oil on pavement. He didn't scream. He just looked at Nia with a kind of exhausted betrayal, the look of a man who'd been bracing for bad news and finally received it. Is it mine? He asked, his voice flat, already knowing the answer. No, Nia said. The truth was simpler than any lie. Then what is this? Nia tried to explain. About the river, about the songs, about the choice she'd made to help. Kofi listened for 30 seconds, his jaw working, then held up his hand. I don't care what she is. I care that you've lost your mind. They're saying you're cursed. They're saying the fish are gone because of you. I can't come back here until she's gone. He left. He didn't slam the door. That would have meant he still felt something. He just closed it quietly, the way you close a book you've decided not to finish. Nia sat on the floor, the cheap linoleum cool against her forehead. Kai reached a wet hand over the edge of the tub and touched her shoulder. Her fingers left damp prints on Nia's dress. "Some bridges burn so new ones can be built," Kai whispered. The next morning, the village noticed. Nia tried to move Kai during the quiet hours before dawn, when the only sounds were roosters and the distant thrum of the cargo trucks on the highway. But Kai was too heavy, too weak. She barely made it from the tub to the bed, leaving a trail of water that pooled on the concrete floor and seeped toward the walls. By sunrise, Nia's neighbor Amma was knocking, persistent, saying she'd seen someone through the window last night, saying the smell coming from Nia's house was strange. Not fish, not rot, something else. Nia opened the door just wide enough to block the view. Said she'd bought fish that had gone bad. She was cleaning it up. Amma's eyes narrowed. Fish didn't smell like that. Fish didn't make you carry water buckets at dawn. Word spread the way it does in small places. Not quickly, but thoroughly, sinking into every crack. By noon, 3 women had found reasons to pass by Nia's house, their footsteps slow, their eyes scanning. By evening, Kofi called, his voice tight. Someone had told him Nia was hiding something. Was she? Nia heard the accusation in his silence, the way he didn't ask what, just waited for her to confess. She lied again, said the fever was worse. She was delirious. She'd been dreaming aloud. He hung up without saying goodbye. She went to the market that afternoon, needing food, needing to look normal. The fishmonger looked at her and shook his head. "Nothing today," he said. "River's gone quiet. Maybe you know why." The vegetable seller turned her back when Nia approached. At the well, the women stopped talking, their silence a wall. They knew. Not the details, but the shape of a secret. They could smell it on her, the way she kept her hands clasped tight, as if holding something invisible. They could see it in how she wouldn't meet their eyes, how she flinched when they mentioned the river. Inside, Kai grew weaker. The water in the tub needed changing, but Nia was afraid someone would see her carrying it. She used a bucket, pouring it out the back window into the banana plants. The plants turned greener overnight, their leaves glossy and unreal, growing inches taller. Nia's own body began to change. She felt it first in her dreams. She was swimming, hunting, her legs moving together like a tail. Then she felt it in her skin, which grew sensitive to dryness, to the roughness of her cotton sheets. She started drinking more water, gallons of it, never feeling quenched. She began to hear the river at night, not as noise but as language. It was asking for something, begging. Kai told her what it was. "The river is dying because my people are dying. We are its memory. When we go, it forgets how to be a river. It becomes just water. Just a thing to be used. The songs are what keep it alive, and we are what keep the songs." "How do you save a memory?" Nia asked, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "By keeping us alive," Kai said, and looked at Nia with a hope so heavy it felt like drowning. "By raising a child who can sing both songs. She will be the bridge. But bridges need anchors on both sides." That night, Nia stole fish from the market. She waited until Old Man Tembo was arguing with a customer over the price of catfish, his attention diverted. She slipped 2 tilapia from his stall, their silver bodies still twitching, and wrapped them in newspaper. She walked home fast, the fish heavy in her bag, feeling the crime in her hands like a brand. She'd never stolen before. She'd never needed to. But hunger changes things. Not her hunger, but the hunger she felt radiating from Kai, from the baby that needed strength to be born. She cleaned the fish in the dark, the knife slippery in her hands, feeding Kai the raw flesh piece by piece. Kai's eyes brightened. Her contractions slowed to a manageable rhythm. But Nia felt the cost in her own bones. She was becoming the kind of woman who stole, who lied, who hid. She was becoming someone her mother might not recognize. Narrator, if Nia's choice speaks to you, if you've ever stood at your own river's edge, torn between what's right and what's safe, tell us where you are in the comments. How many of us have felt that pull between the world we know and the world that needs us? And if you're new here, subscribe so these stories find you when you need them most. On the fourth day, a storm returned. Not a big one, just the afternoon rains that came every June. But Kai reacted like it was a hurricane. She thrashed in the tub, her gills flaring, her eyes wild. "It's coming!" she gasped. "The river is coming for us!" Nia thought she meant the baby, but Kai shook her head. "The river itself. It knows I'm here. It knows what I carry. It wants to claim her before she can choose." Nia helped her from the tub, wrapped her in every towel she owned, and guided her through the back door toward the river. The rain was warm, tropical, drumming on the leaves. They reached the river's edge where Nia had first found her. The water was still, a brown mirror. Kai lowered herself in, and immediately her body relaxed. She floated on her back, her belly breaking the surface like a small island, scales shimmering even in the dull light. "The oil," Kai said. Her voice clearer now, amplified by the water. "It's not just oil. It's memory poison. It makes the river forget it's a river. My people are forgetting how to be people. We're becoming just creatures, just instinct. The baby, she's the first to be born with the remembering already in her blood. But if I birth her in poisoned water, she'll forget before she learns." "How do you keep a memory alive?" Nia asked, rain plastering her hair to her face. "By passing it," Kai said. "From mouth to mouth, from skin to skin. You've already started. You're dreaming my dreams. Your skin is drinking water the way mine does. You're becoming a bridge too." Nia looked at her hands. The skin between her fingers was tender, slightly webbed. She hadn't noticed. She pressed them together, felt the thin membrane stretch. Panic rose in her throat, but Kai's voice calmed it. "It's temporary. It will fade if you choose to send me away. But if you stay, if you help, some of it stays with you. A reminder." "A reminder of what?" "That you belong to the water too. That we all do. We just forgot." They sat in the rain until dusk. Kai told her the secret her people had kept for generations. They weren't separate from humans. They were humans who'd chosen water when the land became too crowded, too cruel. They'd adapted, generation by generation, learning to breathe with gills, to live on what the river provided. They were the original stewards, the ones who'd taught the songs that kept the ecosystem balanced. But as humans forgot the songs, the balance broke. The river got sick, and now the water dwellers were dying because the land dwellers had forgotten they were kin. "The baby is a treaty," Kai said, her hand on her belly. "She will be able to live in both places, speak both languages. She can teach you how to heal the river, but only if you raise her." "Why me?" Nia asked. "There are other women in this village, women who still have husbands, women who aren't broken." Kai looked at her with those deep water eyes. "Because broken women know how to rebuild. You've already lost everything the river could take. Now you have nothing left to lose except fear." They returned to the house as night fell. The neighbors' lights were off, but Nia felt the watching. Curtains twitched. Phones lit up faces in dark rooms. The village was gathering its courage to act. By morning, they would come. Kai knew it too. She told Nia what they needed to do. The birth must happen at the full moon. That's tomorrow night. The river will be at its strongest, its most honest, but the village will try to stop us. They'll think they're protecting themselves. How do we stop them from stopping us? Naya asked. We don't, Kai said. We give them a choice. Just like the baby will have a choice. Just like you have a choice. She told Nia about the scale. Every water dweller shed one scale in their lifetime, a gift that could be given to a land dweller. It carried the memory of the river, the song of belonging. When the giver died, the scale turned to dust. While they lived, it was warm, a beacon. Take one, Kai said, and before Nia could protest, Kai scratched at her hip and peeled free a single silver scale, no bigger than a fingernail. It was warm, pulsing slightly, like a heartbeat. Keep it. Show them. Tell them the river is alive. Tell them it remembers. Naya held it in her palm. It smelled of rain and stone. It felt like hope and grief combined. On the 6th day, the village came. Not with torches, this wasn't a fairy tale, but with nets and fishing spears and the quiet determination of people whose livelihood had vanished. Baba Kente led them, his face grave. They stood in Nia's yard, 20 strong, blocking the path to the river. Nia Kesho, Baba Kente said, using her full name, the one she'd abandoned. We know what you've brought here. We've seen the scales in your wash water. We've seen the fish gathering at your door. Nia looked down. 3 tilapia lay dead on her doorstep, as if they'd swum there and given up. An offering. A warning. The river is speaking, Baba Kente continued. It says you've taken something that belongs to it. You must give it back. I've taken nothing, Nia said, standing on her porch, the baby scale warm in her pocket. I've been given something, a chance to heal the river, a chance to save us all. There is no saving, Baba Kente said. There is only balance. The river gives. The river takes. You are upsetting the balance. Nia felt the weight of their stares. These were people she'd known her whole life. Amma, who'd taught her to braid hair. Old Man Tembo, who'd sold her mother fish on credit. The school children's parents, who trusted her with their sons and daughters. Now they looked at her like she was the curse they'd always suspected. Kai emerged from the house. She'd wrapped herself in a sheet, but her feet were bare, and the webbing between her toes was visible. The villagers gasped. Some stepped back. Others gripped their spears tighter. I am the river, Kai said, her voice carrying despite its softness. I am dying. Your nets have taken too much. Your oil has poisoned what remains. My child is the last chance for us both. Let me birth her. Let her choose. Then I will go. How do we know you'll leave? Someone shouted. How do we know she won't bring more of you? Another voice called. Naya stepped forward. She pulled the scale from her pocket and held it up. In the sunlight, it caught fire, throwing rainbows across the dirt. This is her promise, Nia said. The river is alive. It remembers. It wants to give back, not just take. But we have to let it. Baba Kente stared at the scale. His expression changed, the hardness cracking. He remembered maybe the old stories his own grandmother had told. About the water people. About the songs. About the promises made and forgotten. The full moon is tonight, he said slowly. If you birth this child and the river doesn't heal, you both leave. Forever. Nia looked at Kai. Kai nodded. It was a gamble. There were no guarantees. The river might be too far gone. The baby might not be enough. That night, Naya made her final preparations. She filled the tub with clean water from the pump, adding salt she'd borrowed from Amma's kitchen. She laid out clean cloths, a knife for the cord, herbs for tea. Kai sat in the water, her eyes closed, breathing slow. The contractions were steady now, a rhythm that matched the river's pulse. "The test isn't the birth," Kai said. "The test is what comes after. Will you raise her knowing she might leave you? Will you love her knowing she belongs to two worlds?" Nia thought about her mother, who'd chosen the river over land, over and over, until the river finally kept her. She thought about Kofi, who'd chosen distance over difficulty. She thought about herself, who'd chosen survival over living. "I will," Nia said, and the moment she said it, she felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders like a wet cloak. It was the heaviest thing she'd ever carried. It was also the first thing that had ever felt truly hers. The moon rose, full and heavy. Kai's labor intensified, but the villagers were gathering at the river's edge, watching, waiting to see if the promise would be kept. The test wasn't just Nia's, it was the river's, it was the village's, it was everyone's. The full moon hung low, so close it seemed to press on the water. Nia helped Kai from the tub, wrapped her in every towel she owned, and guided her through the back door toward the river. The village had lit small fires along the bank, not for warmth, but for watching. Their faces flickered in the darkness, expectant, suspicious. Kai moved slowly, her body heavy with transformation. With each step, her tail seemed to split further, becoming legs that could walk, but still belonged to water. They reached the river's edge where Nia had first found her. The water was still, a brown mirror reflecting moon and fire. Kai lowered herself in, and immediately her body relaxed. She floated on her back, her belly breaking the surface like a small island, scales shimmering with firelight and moonlight. "Sing," Kai said. "Sing the song your mother sang, the one about returning what you take." Nia hesitated. Then she began. Her voice was rusty, unused for years, but the river seemed to remember it, picking up the melody and carrying it downstream. Kai joined in, her voice watery and strange, harmonizing in a way that made Nia's bones vibrate. The villagers heard it too. Some of them knew the song, some of them had sung it as children. They began to hum along, tentative at first, then stronger. The contractions peaked. Kai arched back, her mouth open in a silent scream that the river swallowed. Nia waded in, her hands ready, her heart hammering. She'd never delivered a baby alone. She'd always had aunties, nurses, the safety of a clinic. But this moment was older than clinics. It was just women and water and the moon watching like a midwife. The baby came fast. One moment Kai was screaming, the next there was a rush of fluid and a small, perfect body in Nia's hands. The baby girl opened her eyes. They were the color of river stones, gray and green and ancient. She took her first breath, not a cry, but a sound like a stream bubbling over rocks. Then she took a second breath, this one air, and let out a wail that echoed across the water, across the village, across the space where Nia's grief had lived. Kai reached for her child, and Nia placed her on her mother's chest. The baby quieted immediately, listening to the dual heartbeat, one human, one river. Kai looked at Nia, her eyes soft with a kind of peace Nia had never seen. "Your name is her anchor," Kai whispered. "But your love is her world." She kissed the baby's forehead, her lips leaving a wet mark that looked like a blessing. Then she handed her to Nia. "She needs both of us now. But I must go back. My people are waiting for the song. Without it, they'll forget how to live. They'll forget they were ever human." Nia wanted to argue, to say Kai couldn't leave, that this child needed her mother, that she needed Kai. But she saw the truth in Kai's eyes. Some loves are about presence. Some wombs are about purpose. Kai's purpose was in the deep water, keeping memory alive. Nia's was here, on land, teaching a child how to belong to two worlds. Kai slipped beneath the surface. The last thing Naya saw was her tail, iridescent in the moonlight, flicking once before disappearing into the dark. The villagers gasped. Some dropped to their knees. Others just stared at the ripples, their spears forgotten in the mud. The baby in Nia's arms was warm. She had 10 fingers, 10 toes, and the softest ridge of scales along her spine. So small you could miss it if you weren't looking. She opened her eyes again and looked at Nia. For a moment, Nia felt the weight of both worlds in that gaze. The deep water and the dry land, the past and the future, the grief and the grace. 7 days later, the river cleared. It happened overnight, as if the water had remembered its own nature. The brown sediment settled to the bottom. The oily sheen vanished. The smell of rot faded, replaced by something clean and ancient. Fish returned, first small ones, the ones that eat algae, then larger tilapia, then the big catfish that had been absent for years. The village called it a miracle. Baba Kente came to Nia's door, his face confused, his spear gone. "The river is singing again," he said. "Did you hear it?" "I heard it," Nia said, rocking the baby on her porch. The child had no name yet. Nia was waiting for the right one to come, maybe in a dream, maybe in a song. Kofi returned on the 8th day. He didn't ask about Kai. He looked at the baby, at the way Nia held her with a confidence he'd never seen, and something in his face softened. He touched the baby's foot. She kicked. His hand trembled. "Is she mine?" he asked again, but this time his voice held hope, not accusation. "She's ours," Nia said. "If you want her, if you're brave enough." He stayed. He didn't understand, but he stayed. That was enough for now. Nia found a single silver scale in the baby's blanket the next morning, warm to the touch, pulsing gently. She kept it in her mother's locket, which she'd finally opened and placed the scale inside. The locket now held a memory that was alive, not dead. She wore it against her skin, and sometimes she could feel it humming, singing the song Kai had taught her. She named the baby Casey, born of water. And she taught her both songs, the lullaby of the land and the one Kai had taught her, the one about current and stone. Casey sang them both, sometimes at the same time, harmonizing with herself in a way that made the neighbors pause and listen, that made the fish gather at the river's edge, that made the water run clearer. The river stayed clean. The fish stayed plentiful. Some said they saw a woman swimming in the deep parts at dawn, her tail flashing like a promise. Nia never looked. She didn't need to. She knew Kai was there, singing the memory back into the water, teaching her people the songs again. And she knew Casey would one day have to choose which world to live in fully. But that was tomorrow's problem. Today. Nia Kesho was a mother. Today, the river gave back what it had taken. Today, love looked like a baby with riverstone eyes, and a father learning to sing off-key, and a village slowly remembering how to listen to water. If this story found you tonight, maybe you're at your own river's edge, a place where grief and grace meet, where what you've lost brushes against what you might gain. Tell us what you would have chosen. Would you have taken the mermaid's hand? Would you have burned the bridge or built it? Share it with someone who's forgotten that love doesn't always arrive in the shape we expect. And subscribe, so the next time the tide brings something unexpected to your shore, these stories will be here to help you understand it. The river remembers what we try to forget. Let's remember together.